Picking homeschool curriculum for your high schooler is time-consuming and overwhelming. I know this because I've been doing this since the 90s. Hi, my name is Michelle Holmes, and this is the High School Curriculum Spotlight Podcast. Each episode, I plan to bring you interviews with vendors who can help you provide a successful and positive high school experience for your teens at home. So let's see how you can utilize today's vendor in your homeschool journey. Hello, Maddie. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here. Everyone, this is Maddie Broder. She is the founder of the Writer's Desk, and she is here to share with her wonderful program. Hello, Maddie.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm truly excited to be here, and I can't wait to tell all of the students you reach more about our programs and how they can help students get through high school ELA with no problems whatsoever.
Wonderful. So Maddie, as we said, it's Writer's Desk. So we, just from the name, we know that this is covering the educational branch of language arts in the writing area of the language arts branch. Could you share with us your program? But can you kind of tell us at the start, like, why did you start this business and how do you want to help the homeschooling community?
Sure. Okay. Well, that sounds great. There's a lot to cover there. So I grew up in a family that was very focused on writing and education. My grandfather was a journalist for the Washington Post, and my mom was a longtime English classroom teacher for middle school English. So after I graduated from Yale, I did the Teach for America program. And then I really wanted to do something that would allow me to help students a little bit more personally. It felt like there was something missing from my classroom teaching experience. And I think a lot of your homeschool community and your homeschool kids, perhaps that's why they choose a homeschool route. They too feel that the classroom is maybe not the most personal way that they could learn. So I started tutoring students one-on-one. I was helping them with their English and humanities work. And then I fell into this really interesting niche of tutoring, helping students write their college application essays. Okay. And this was incredibly rewarding for me. We actually still offer this service with my business. But we started noticing that even the most sort of prepared students, even the students coming out of the best high schools, they still felt a little bit underprepared to write their essays as successfully as they could. And so when my mom retired from being a classroom teacher, this was a little bit before COVID hit, I convinced her to write this suite of English curricula with me. I said, Mom, we really need to help students be more prepared to write their college application essays, more prepared as high school writers. So this became, what we currently have and what we're currently selling. And also it opened up this interesting portal for us. Well, how are high school students and middle school students learning English? And what ways could we sort of improve upon that? So we took all the skills and knowledge that my mom had from her years and years of classroom teaching, and we decided that we wanted to focus on creating courses for students that were centered around a single work of American literature each. We felt like we could really do this very personal deep dive with students, focusing on just one book at a time. And then each of our courses has a capstone writing assignment that focuses on a different area of writing that they might need, whether that's the personal creative essay or the thesis essay. And so our hope for students is that I know many of the English curricula or English courses that are out there, especially online, maybe they're a little bit convoluted, or the systems that they're managed on, the online systems, maybe they're not so easy to use. And so our hope was to create a really simple, friendly, easy to use system that would also allow students to really deepen their understanding of the English language, of the best works of American literature, and become better writers through doing that.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I just love that you're doing this with your mom. I have a couple of different businesses with my children, and it gives your customers the benefit to having different generations put in their experiences into your business. And so I love that.
Absolutely. And I think one thing, that's wonderful too is that our courses, because they were written by a mother-daughter pair, they're really designed for parents and students to enjoy together. They're easy for students to use and easy for parents to kind of tag along and join in the fun with. So I love that you noticed that, and we hope that students and parents notice that as well.
Yeah. So you mentioned American literature. So can you break down how I'm supposed to use this with my teen? So is this an online program? Is it independent? Like, how is the program structured?
Sure. So this is an online program, and we are pending approval. We'll get approval in May for our WASC accreditation, which means that your student can take our courses. We will be able to print a transcript for them, and they can use this as part of their high school or middle school credit. So we have 5 courses currently in our suite of courses, and these are designed to cover an entire year of English. So we go so deeply into each book. Our courses are very rigorous and probably much more thorough than other products that you would find out there. And so by purchasing sort of our 5 books, you should be able to guide yourself at a relatively, I would say, steady pace through a year of English. Now, of course, the ease with which you're able to, I would say, navigate the rigorousness of the exercises in the course, that's going to depend on the student's lexile level and their reading ability. But the idea is that we designed our courses to be flexible and appeal to different readers and writers. So just like almost, maybe this will be a silly example, but with a chef, how they, even to the best chefs, they give this assignment of, can you just cook 1 fried egg? Because it's something that no matter what level of cooking you're at, you can always improve it a little. And so we think our courses will really appeal to students, whether they're in 6th grade or all the way up to 12th grade. They can really, infuse all of their knowledge and all of the sort of intellect that they've gained into these books, and these books that we've chosen and the stories we've chosen, they're true classics. And so anyone from a 6th grader to even an adult will be able to really glean some powerful messages from the text that we've chosen.
Okay, so are you saying that your curriculum that you have available right now would only be used for 1 year?
You could use it for 1 year of English, or you could pair it with other course offerings from different businesses. So say you're taking an ELA course that's been designed by a different provider, but you feel like, what, this year I really wanted to read the book The Outsiders, and I really wanted to learn how to do a creative writing assignment. That book and that assignment isn't featured in the class that I chose. You could supplement your program with just 1 book from our suite of courses. But the idea is, if you wanted to, you could use our 5 courses to cover your entire year of English learning. And then to decide, sort of what year, for parents wondering, oh, well, would this work for my 7th grader? Would it work for my 11th grader? Again, that really depends on your student's level, what their reading and writing level is. But we love talking with parents. We love talking with students. And so we're always open to answering questions about whether our program would be a good fit for a particular student.
So can you tell us what ELA stands for?
English Language Arts.
Okay, so English Language Arts. And so language arts is a huge category in the educational branch. And so for homeschool parents, when they're navigating giving their kids a credit on their transcript, it's kind of gets confusing. Like, well, aren't they supposed to do poetry? Aren't they supposed to be just doing writing and grammar? And so does your program, it sounds like it's a little bit literature and writing together.
Yes.
It's actually 2 different things that you're bringing together.
Yes. So we tried to take a very holistic and interdisciplinary approach. And so our courses really are robust English courses, and they will cover the nitty-gritty of kind of grammar and vocabulary and sentence structure and teaching you literary terms. But then you're also going to learn how to write in multiple different styles of writing if you take our entire suite of courses.
Okay, because a lot of homeschool laws or graduation, high school graduation requirements for each state, they usually require a writing component, at least for 2 years. So for instance, I'm in the state of Illinois, and the graduation requirement here is to have 2 years of a writing component. And that writing component can be in another subject like science, but there always has to be a writing component pretty much for every single state. You don't have to write all 4 years, but you do need to have at least, usually probably like a minimum. Again, it's up to your homeschool state laws or your graduation requirements for the state. So this would get your first year of that requirement done, and it would check off grammar and literature all together.
All in one. And we are going to be coming out with more courses. So for the students who sign on with us now, we are going to be continuing to fill out our library of book courses. So students will be able to take, eventually up to 4 years of writing credits with us, and even maybe beyond that. Obviously, Writer's Desk, we do believe that the writing skills are really critical. I have taken really effective science writing classes myself as an undergraduate in college and a high school student. But there is something particularly special about reading one story and then learning various writing components from that story. And so we find that students who are willing to kind of dive in, I know it can sometimes be a bit of a scary landscape, the world of reading and writing, but students who are able to dive in so deeply to a single book and then commit themselves to writing a piece about it. And we really help students in our courses structure their writing so they have multiple drafts and a rubric and an ability to edit their own work along the way. But we find that the students who really dive into that, they get a special experience out of it. There's a lot of magic in reading stories and writing about them and in storytelling that really makes the courses, I think, fly by and makes them really a lot of fun.
And so are these courses self-paced?
They are self-paced.
Okay.
And so as a student, when you log into our learning management system homepage, we use a learning management system called Bench Prep, and they also host some of ACT.org's online courses. So it's very professional and easy to use. But when you log in, you're able to set the date that you would like the course to end on.
Oh,
and then,
wonderful.
which is great. And then within our course, we have content locking. And so essentially, as you finish certain components of the course, the later half of the course starts to unlock for you and you can take it.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure that students weren't going to skip ahead and try to write their writing assignment before they were equipped with the tools to do so. But so by setting the date that you'd like your course to end, the course will actually send you reminders and it will prompt you to do your work and finish your assignment so that you're on track with the goals that you've set for yourself.
Yeah. Well, Maddie, I love that, if I'm understanding correctly, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I love that your coursework doesn't have a grade attached to it. Like, oh, this is freshman. Oh, this is, a senior work. Because I love that I don't have to, I can just use your course. And it sounds to me that the student will be attempting that workload at the skill level that they are. So even if they're remedial, even if they need to do a lot of remedial work, they can do it a lot slower and they can pace. I love that.
Yeah, that was really, thank you, because that was really one of our goals. And I know that something that the homeschool community is looking for is that kind of flexibility of not having to read things within a certain amount of time in a classroom setting. Our courses are also great for students who would rather listen to a book on an Audible type app. So you can absolutely do our courses by, having your book as a read to you experience. So we wanted to accommodate truly all types of learners and all levels of student. I know, for those of us who went through a more traditional schooling system, we've all had that experience of feeling like, wow, this book is way too challenging for me, or feeling like, man, this is really easy. I'd love to be able to skip ahead. And so we purposefully didn't attach
Yeah.
grade levels to our courses
Yeah.
so that students could have that flexibility.
Well, and I think it's really important that you can read a book when you are 13 and reread it when you are a senior and get completely different things out of it. Right.
Absolutely.
And I think sometimes in the homeschooling community, it's like, oh, well, we already done that. Right. Instead of realizing that our children are approaching the same topic, maybe 2 or 3 years with a little bit more of life behind them, a little bit more skills behind them.
Absolutely. I think, that was for me a kind of pivotal part of my journey as a learner, was rereading the book To Kill a Mockingbird as an adult, just for fun.
Uh-huh.
So I had read it as a 7th grader. And I remember at the time, my parents just making sort of an offhand remark about how this was really advanced for 7th grade. And so I reread it as an adult. And it was really astounding to me, just the layers that I was able to pick up on upon rereading this book. And so we absolutely encourage our students to revisit these works and see if you notice anything new. And then this is part of what we hope will bring parents and their students, their children together in learning through our courses, is that the parents will feel called, wow, I haven't read that book in such a long time. I'd love to look at it again. Or even parents feeling like, wow, the writing prompts in this course are just so interesting. I'd love to write a personal essay about myself and just take a stab at that. We live in such a hectic, fast-paced world, both for students and parents. Being able to take a breather with a great book and have it count for course credit, and having that course be a gateway to really give you a window into your heart and soul through writing. We were really looking to share that experience with other people.
That's wonderful. You did mention parents in the
Mhm.
last couple of sentences. So
Yeah.
here's my question. What is the parent involvement with your program?
So for high-paced, high performing learners, those students will likely be able to go through our courses with very little parent involvement. What I love about our courses is that parents, if their students are needing more support,
Mhm.
they can simply log into our learning management system with their student, and our exercises are extremely clearly laid out. And so it will be very easy for parents to follow along and help their student grow and work through the exercises and the vocabulary and the short answer questions. So there's no parent requirement per se, but we did try to design courses that would be easy for parents to help their learners with, if their learners needed that.
Okay, so my student is reading the book, physically reading the book, and then
Mm-hmm.
they log on to the program to follow the writing prompts. Are they writing right onto the computer, or are they writing and then scanning something and sending it to you?
So they are writing directly into our learning management system, into a text box in the computer. And what's really nice is that there's also a notes function in the learning management system. So students can take notes on whatever kind of comes to their mind, whether it's about a certain chapter in the book, an exercise they've done, and they're able to, I know I described the content locking and unlocking sort of
Mhm.
feature, but once you've unlocked content, you can seamlessly move to and from the
Okay.
content that you've worked on in the course. And so it's very simple for you to go back in a course to look at your note. That's something that was really important to us, because if students are going to be having success on their final writing assignment, they need to be able to go back through the course and see all the notes that they've taken, see the answers that they've given, maybe go over their vocabulary flashcards one more time so that they can include some new vocabulary words in their answer to this essay. So we really tried to make it, a kind of all in one place, all encompassing course. So you don't have to do anything difficult technologically. Everything is right there in the learning management system.
So, when a program's working really well for a homeschool parent, it kind of like just happens seamlessly in the home. But but when something isn't working, it's frustrating for the parent, it's frustrating for the kids. How do you come along and support the family when things aren't working well?
Absolutely. So we have a lot of layers of support. I mean, we have our team at Writer's Desk, and all of us are able and willing to lend support and lend a hand within 24 hours. So students will
Okay.
never be waiting long for support. And what's nice too is our learning management system, Bench Prep, they're also an added layer of support. So as anything technologically, which knock on wood, it shouldn't, but potentially
Yeah.
goes wrong, we've got 2 layers of support to help with that. So we're here to support with technology and content, and then we've got a backup support
Okay.
in Bench Prep to further technologically support students.
So you're okay with the moms who call you and go, this isn't making any sense to me. I can't explain something. You
Absolutely.
have like, I can call you or I can email you.
Absolutely. You can call us, you can email us. We
Okay.
are here to help and here to help you work through whatever issues are arising as
Okay.
you move through our content.
Well, it sounds like you got the parent side covered.
Well, so I come from the private tutoring world. And so as much as I've worked with students, I've worked that much with parents, and I know what's important to them, what they need to be solved, and just how they need to feel supported too, because it can be really frustrating when you've purchased an educational good or service and you feel
Mhm.
like it's not doing what it's supposed to do. That's the last thing we want.
Great, that sounds wonderful. Well, let's circle back just a little bit to, you said that there are 5 components to the year.
Mhm.
And each of those 5 components have a purpose. Why 5? Why these 5
Sure.
components?
Sure. So we wanted to do a mix of our longer book courses, which could take students months to get through, and our short story courses, which are just supposed to be a little bit pithier and a little bit faster paced. So then in terms of how we think about going about a year of English and writing learning, one thing that was really important to us was to make sure that within this kind of genre of American literature, that students were exposed to multiple different types of authors and multiple different types of protagonists. So we tried to pick authors that really covered a spread of story ideas that students could face. And we tried to pick protagonists in those stories that were of different ages and just facing different problems. We wanted to keep things interesting and varied for our students. I remember in college, or maybe even in high school, that feeling of, oh, wow, it feels like I keep reading the same thing over and over again, right? We're switching books, but things aren't really getting much different. Maybe I'm just thinking of my year of reading Shakespeare in high school. But so we wanted to make sure that students were really engaged, and that meant putting in variation. And so in order to put in variation, having 5 diverse titles was really important to us.
Okay, so they're going to read 5 books within the year?
They'll read 3 books and 2 short stories within the year.
All right. And why are you focusing on American literature for this course?
That's a great question. It was something that my mom and I, when we were kind of in our very, very just infant beginning stages of developing these courses, we started with the book of Mice and Men. We felt like it was a real classic, and my mom had taught it for many years, and we love that it's it's not the longest book, but it has so many powerful messages about human nature and friendship and love and loss. It's a really poignant story. So we started with that, and it just sort of got us thinking, what, in this time when we can often feel that we're so divided in this country, can we really find something that we all love and celebrate? And it felt like a natural next step. Let's do another work of American literature. And then we really started looking into how many amazing American authors there's been, and we couldn't stop. We felt like, okay, this is our genre that we want to cover.
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's American authors and that they're more current, especially
Yes.
Well, for our teens, it might not feel very current, but that they're current. And so do you think that if someone went through this program, that they would be able, especially if they're older, like a junior or senior, would they be able to take the information that you've given them in this course, maybe add a little bit more and be prepared to take the American Literature CLEP course?
Absolutely. One thing I noticed before we developed these courses was that through my private tutoring work with students, I was not explicitly preparing them for the ACT or the SAT writing section, for example, but I kept having student after student come back, another perfect score, another perfect score on their writing, another perfect score, even when they were struggling with other areas or elements of the test. And so I do think, again, because of the rigorousness and the high level of our courses, we end up really pushing students to achieve, I think, on a level that they were not aware that they could, and they become prepared to take a whole host of standardized tests or other exams through working through our courses.
So I mentioned the CLEP, but you were mentioning the ACT or SAT, which is the personal essay.
Yes.
So that's two totally different things that your kids could actually be prepared for by taking your course. And
definitely.
So let's focus a little bit more of the conversation on that personal essay, because I know, Maddie, you and I have talked about this before, about how it is so important for our teens to learn how to have a writer's voice and how their personal essay, college readers, the ones who are actually reading all of those,
yes,
they know when it's coming from the student themselves and it's really personal. They're trained to learn how to look for signs, right?
Yes.
It's amazing. Can you talk a little bit why you're focusing on the personal essay and why that's so beneficial for our teens?
Sure. So I think what you mentioned, Michelle, is great. There's this very concrete benefit to the personal essay, which is your college application. And I think oftentimes students have truly never written a personal 650 word piece of writing before they've gotten to their college application. And now all of a sudden they're arriving in a very high stakes situation without that kind of preparation. So we've got that very practical reason that we do it. We want to help students get into their dream colleges. And part of doing that is to practice writing that type of essay before you're actually on the diving board about to do your perfect 10. There's another reason though, which is that we really believe that writing is such a gateway to communication, and it's a gateway to advocating for yourself as well. And so as we think about this kind of complex world where students have to navigate, a very, I don't want to say murky, because I don't want to be pessimistic at all, but just an increasingly complicated terrain that is sort of the job landscape, the graduate school landscape, putting your work into the world and being compensated for that. One of the most beneficial things you can do to prepare yourself to be an amazing and qualified job applicant is to learn to be a writer, because that will give you the tools and skills to express yourself personally, right? To write that cover letter that convinces XYZ person that you're the right person for the job, or even to land that, coffee shop chat that's going to lead to you meeting the right person and then getting hired. All of those things require for you to be able to write, and in particular, write about yourself with passion, conviction, style, and also just from your heart in a way that's really genuine.
Yeah. And so it sounds to me like a year with you, our teens would be practicing that, writing about their opinions.
Absolutely.
About literature is a great tool, because usually in language arts programs, it's like, read this book and then answer these questions. Your program's a little different than just answering a set of flashcard vocabulary words and answering these questions. How many men were, in the bus?
And we certainly, we do ask the literal questions in our program. So we certainly ask students to pinpoint specifics about what they've read, and that type of memorization and recall, it's an important skill. But we also want to teach our students to be critical thinkers, and we want to teach them to be self-reflective too. And so we ask the questions that go beyond that. How did you feel when this character said that? What connection can you make between your life and this character's life? How does the relationship between these two characters remind you of X thing that's happening in today's world? We really try to push the students to be able to take it a level beyond.
Yeah, those are wonderful questions. It's like, I would want to be a fly on the wall just to hear their answers, because sometimes we don't give our teens, especially that freshman and sophomore year, or even like 7th and 8th graders, they can read something and get some really good insight that you didn't even think of, because they're approaching it from their world and what the information that they've been given. So I love those types of questions.
Totally. And I found both in my classroom teaching work that I did right at the beginning of my career, and then in my tutoring work, when you give students sort of the power of the pen and the power to just express themselves freely, they come back with the most amazing and moving and heartfelt personal ideas that really can just floor you. I mean, there are so many student essays that I've edited for students that have just moved me to tears because of their profound insights. And I feel that the students who take our courses will undoubtedly uncover those types of insights in themselves as well as they're working through the classes.
Well, that's wonderful. Well, Maddie, we're coming up to the end of our podcast already.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michelle. I really appreciate your having me on, and I really appreciate everyone who's listened to me talk about Writer's Desk, and we're absolutely here to help students navigate their English learning journey and to answer questions.
Yeah, well, I love the idea behind Writer's Desk and everything that you and your mom have put together. And I hope that this program will really meet one of the listeners out there's needs, and that you'll be able to navigate language arts, the writing component, and literature together.
We hope so too. We hope so too.
Well, thank you, Maddie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you for joining me today. If today's vendor has a product or service that you think would support your homeschool journey, you can check out their links in the show notes below, or you can learn more about today's vendor and other resources in our Facebook community, which you can find at facebook.com/groups/high school curriculum spotlight. Also, if there is a specific vendor that you would like me to interview, I would love for you to DM me on any of my socials. You can find me at Homeschool Directive on both Facebook and Instagram. And one last thing, if you have a friend who is also homeschooling a teen and you think they would benefit from today's podcast, would you please share it with them? Because we could all use a little help here to make our homeschooling journey stronger. Again, thank you for joining me today. Until next time, goodbye.